And now we officially open the third ESD talk with the title Greening Responses to Excellence. This talk is part of a series of talks hosted by the context of this project. So for the next 4 years, Teach for SD will perform 4 of these ESD talks a year where we explore ESD from different angles. At the last ESD talk, we delved into green skills from the health sector's perspective with interesting perspectives on both a very on-the-ground experience of implementing the green agenda and a helicopter view on the Pact for Skills. So this version you can find streamed on our website, teachforsd.eu. And today we have Susanne Nielsen from the European Training Foundation. After her presentation, we have the privilege of having a Q&A with you. And for those of you who are online, you can ask your questions in the comments. And for those of you here, there will be mics ready to take your questions at the end. So now it's time to give the floor to Susanne Nielsen. And you're leading the Global Green Partnership, GRETA, Greening Responses to Excellence Through Thematic Actions. And you'll present your organization, the GRETA Partnership, give recommendations, and some concrete examples on your work on the green transition. So thank you so much for being here today. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you. And hello to all of you, the people, the persons behind and in the Teach for Sustainability or Sustainable Development. I have been looking very much forward to meeting you all. And I thank the project. I thank Elisava for the invitation. And when I heard from the Danish partners, when we were having exchanges on where this meeting would take place in Barcelona, and one of them said to me, and Susanne, it's actually taking place at the very Rambla. And I said, no, I didn't say, but I was thinking, no, maybe that's a little bit exaggerating. Maybe they got it wrong. But here we are in this fantastic street at the very Rambla, having a green partnership meeting. I look forward to follow. And I hope what I'm going to tell you will maybe inspire. We have been working in the GRETA project for nearly 3 years now, but I also hope it could maybe give ground for synergies and future cooperation between Teach for Sustainable Development and what we are doing at the European Training Foundation. I hope some slides would come up now. Yes. So I'm Susanne Nielsen, as you heard. My title is quite long. I'm Green Skills Expert, and I'm also country responsible for Ukraine, which I'm very proud of. And I hope I will have opportunity to also exchange directly with Ukrainian participants here today, and of course, all of you. European Training Foundation, it's an EU agency of the European Commission. We are located in Torino, and we have focused on vocational education training. We focus on the countries outside Europe, and we support them in economic development through human capital development. The way we work is, of course, on many different dimensions. We have a number of projects and activities, but to single it down, we are providing policy advice on how to move forward in human capital development through various studies and initiatives. We believe strongly in peer learning, similar to what you do. I take it that's the reason why you are participating in this project, because peer learning really has a power of seeing new things, maybe of your own organization when you share what you are doing, and getting inspiration from others. So next slide, please. This is what we agreed that I would be focusing on. A few words on our network for excellence. Then going into detail how we have been working in our green partnership named GRETA. It stands for Greening Responses to Excellence Through Thematic Actions. And then I would give some ideas on how to form maybe a more solid approach for embedding sustainability principles into education through a whole system approach. And in the end, I wouldn't call it a pep talk, but maybe a few recommendations based on the experiences and results we have gained so far. So, how does that sound to you? Okay, let's get started. ETF, Network for Excellence, ENE in short, we love abbreviations. That's what it stands for. It's a global network, so not only for countries outside EU that are our target countries in ETF, what we do, but also for EU countries and beyond. I'm proud to say it's a global network, like your project is a global project. We have at the moment more than 330 members, centers of vocational excellence for over 40 different countries, and it's growing as we speak. Centers of vocational excellence, as you know, are defined, understood, used differently. It's a bit of a difficult term, but I would say it can either be a cluster of stakeholders working around skills, for Greta, green skills, or an individual center, an individual education provider. What is specific about centers of vocational excellence is, in most cases, that they are specialized in providing skills for specific occupations and that they deliver quality skills that meets the demand of the industry. And that's a third characteristic, the combination, the cooperation with industry, and then fourthly, having a lifelong learning approach. I take it the vocational excellence concept is something you have already discussed within previous meetings in the Teach for Sustainable Development project. The way we work in our network is through different development partnerships. Some are focusing on entrepreneurial learning, some are on social inclusion, some are on greening, and this is where Greta comes into the picture. I'm leading our green initiative, Greta. Next slide. So Greta comes out of the global network, and we are focusing on greening wet. We have focused on green skills, ecosystems. In my presentation, I'll say a little bit about that because that's an important approach, understanding when we talk about greening, embedding sustainability into education, that we have a whole perspective of the partners that are necessary. We identified different greening processes. What are the elements? How are they interlinked or how are they not interlinked? And we focus a lot on practice sharing. We have I would say proudly, a large catalog of inspiring practices that I'm happy also to share with you, of course. And we are co-designing webinars, and we are providing policy recommendations for moving forward. And let's move forward. Greta is about a response, yes, to excellence, but a response to the demand that the green and digital transitions are posing on education. Green transition, policy-driven, about finding or living up to the commitments actually at the highest level of the COP, the Paris Agreement, so that we ensure we are not having yet another broken record when it comes to temperature rising. Digital transition is market-driven, driven by good business, hopefully, and clever design here at Elisava and other places of the world. Sometimes these two transitions work together. Sometimes the green transition can benefit from new development, green technologies, but not always. We tend to call these two transitions twin transition, but I would state it's definitely not identical twins. I think this is very important, but both of them has an impact on the skills and the different jobs. The impact we see when we read worldwide different perspectives, expectations for jobs, and also upfront. Dirty jobs, manual jobs, they are disappearing as we speak. And there are new demands related to, of course, new skills demand related to the new so-called green jobs and the digital jobs. But in most cases, we are talking about greening up the existing jobs. And that, of course, relates then to greening up existing profiles, existing occupations. Next slide. So greening that, which is what you're talking about, what Greta is about, is part of this economic revolution or modernization strategy as we see for the moment, directed towards the two transitions I was just talking about. And we see different structural changes in job profiles, in occupations. And it gives really new perspective for VET, for education, because it is mainly technical skills that are in demand when we talk about the green transition. It's a new momentum, a golden opportunity for attractiveness of vocational education. Let's move on. I thought already now, in the middle of my presentation, I would come up with some key statements, just because it's a keynote speech I was asked to give. So let's take it now. A little bit more will come in the end. No green transition without skills. That is our mantra. We cannot move forward if we don't have the skills for the green transition. Green transition needs to be purple. Purple is the color of gender equality. We need to have the women and girls on board. They need much more to go into STEM education. I wonder how the figures are here at Elisava, how many female students you have. We can get back to that at the coffee break. It's good? Perfect.
I don't know the exact numbers, but it's pretty good.
Good girl in the class. Happy to hear that. And each sector strategy for decarbonization, for greening up, of course, needs to have a skills element. Otherwise, it will fail. Transition, that's the fifth message. And green transition is not fair by default. It's only by design. So we cannot ensure just transition, just like hoping. We need to put up policy measures, employment measures for those that are actually affected by the green transition, those that are losing the jobs that I was just talking about. And this is where I think Centers of Vocational Excellence has an excellent role to play in local, regional eco-skill systems, because it is at the regional, local level that the solutions should be found to the green transition, because this is where the green transition takes place, together with the enterprises in a specific region. I hope you can agree to number 5, no transition without international cooperation. We need each other, from the very commitment of the Paris Agreement and down to here today, working together, having a common goal, really to fight this climate change through skills. And lastly, we are arguing at the European Training Foundation that ESCO, the European Skills, I can never remember the correct title, but the ESCO system for classification of occupation skills and so forth is a very good tool for having this common language of skills, profiles, occupations. And the two frameworks that came up a few years ago, Green Competence Framework and Digital Competence Framework, are useful tools for all these different discussions on what are green skills, what are digital skills. I take it is something you are familiar with and are maybe using in some of your activities and work packages. I see nodding, let's move on. Few words on what we did in Greta, maybe for inspiration. We started out in 2021 with a small group of 20 Centers of Vocational Excellence, all online, putting up a system on peer visits, online peer visits. A school visiting another school, listening to them, reviewing or asking questions, and then having the school presenting. That's really a learning mechanism when you need to present yourself, your school, what you're doing, you start thinking, is that really how we do it? And so forth. And it's also a learning opportunity when a peer is asking, maybe not nasty questions, but inspiring questions that make you think. We got a lot out of these peer reviews. Based on that, together we put on an activity, a peer planning, because where were the hiccups, where were the strengths, the weaknesses, what do we need? And then we have implemented a lot of thematic action learnings. And we continue. We continue not only with the 20 pilot centers of vocational excellence that we started out with. Now it's open for all our members, our 330 plus members, and there's a huge interest because of the green topic. It's hot, it's necessary, but also we can see really this interest and maybe need to learn from each other. We are all a little bit on unknown territory, and it's inspiring to see that advanced, less advanced institutions are talking to each other, having the same questions and learning from each other. That's the strength of peer learning. And I'm sure that you have maybe also similar experience in your project. Let's move on. I think time is maybe. I always put this slide. It's because I'm proud of it. Already in 2020, we got an Excellence Award from the European Commission through our work and support to Ukraine. Of course, personally, I'm very proud of it because I'm responsible. I'm the Ukraine liaison at the European Training Foundation, and we have key focus on a green recovery for Ukraine. That was just showing off. Let's take the next slide. Key findings from our peer reviews, and I wonder if you have similar issues that you see it the same way. We see that at vet provider level, there's a recognition on the importance of having a green strategy. Important. But it's important to take the next steps, to have clear indicators, to have a clear monitoring, to follow up, make adjustments. We don't see that so often. At least at the moment, the first steps are taken in many of the cooperation partners. There's a lot of focus on greening campus and extracurricular activities. That's all good, but it's important that it works in the same way, that it's embedded and integrated in a common strategy for a campus, for a skills ecosystem. We also see some limited development of new training programs. It's more or less the add-on, but maybe it's reflecting a little bit what we are seeing now. It's not so much new green jobs, it's about greening the existing profiles. So that's mirroring a little bit reality. Big problem, lack of qualification of teachers. 3 out of 4 of our members say this is the key barrier for moving forward. Teachers do not have the green competences. And that's of course important to have green continued professional development for teachers to overcome this fundamental barrier. Not always easy to work with external stakeholders. I know that this is a key component in your project. I look forward to hear how you find solution experiences and maybe some golden practices that we can learn from. Finally, it's also difficult to be in an international partnership. It's about having time, seeing that you actually gain something from it. I don't know if you experience, but it's great you're here. Next slide. I think we take next slide. This is the one I wanted to show you because based on our peer reviewing and discussion in the pilot when we started out, we could see the importance of finding and having a more systematic approach for embedding sustainability into education, for greening VET. And here we have developed a whole system approach, a whole institutional approach. It is inspired and based on the approach that Univoc developed in 2017, the VET part of the UN. We have tailored it to the characteristics of centers of vocational excellence, where the cooperation with different stakeholders is key. But we state that the elements of training, of strategies, funding, stakeholders, teachers, all needs to work together to have a robust and successful greening to deliver the skills that we need for the green transition. My idea is now to go through each of the elements. Could you say a little bit about the timing, how long I have, how much I have left?
You have 15 more minutes.
That's good news.
Yeah,
But 10 minutes for questions.
but I mean, we started 10 minutes late, so you're good.
You just say when, yeah, you do that one. Okay, let's have a look at the different elements. I'll try and be brief. Hey, by the way, that one, QR code, so I can run a little bit easy through it, because actually all our findings, description of the process on greening, the 5 elements, the experiences of our pilots, and a catalog of best practices is in our Greta report. So I thought I would give you the QR code, and then you can study more careful. Best practices from EU countries and EU neighboring countries. So next slide. Or I hope you had time to get it. Vision and greening, that's the first element of the whole institutional approach. Walking the talking, of course. It's important a school that is into green also show it by what they actually do in campus. We have seen many different types, green buildings, green equipment, and of course, different ways of engaging students in the local area. All important to have this living what we teach. Next slide. Here I have listed a few examples of what we have identified in our Greta project. What is most important is that the different initiatives in greening campus is somehow feeded into the learning, somehow reflected in learning outcomes, because then it becomes robust. We had an example of green idea labs where actually students were creating their own programs, creative thinking on waste management, having a business case, either theoretical or actually from the local community. This is something that really is changing the mindset. And this is what building green skills is mostly about, changing the mindset. So having an inclusion of different initiatives in campus, included it into learning outcome, is key if it's going to be robust and change a mindset. That was the key message from this one. Next. Curriculum, training programs. This is how to do it the real. This is mainly what we talk about when we say greening VET. But again, I repeat myself, it's just 1 out of 5 integrated elements. Here, just I have written down what there's focus on. Of course, in each of the training programs, the profiles, the occupations, to take each of the small items of a training program and green it up, including the environmental awareness. That's what the points here are showing, recognizing the opportunities, for example, to avoid environmental pollution, having consideration of what is the impact aspect of what we are doing, and so forth. Next slide. I need to run a little bit. Third element, teachers' professional development, key. As I said, in our network, 3 out of 4 of our centers say this is the key barrier for actually moving forward in providing, designing, delivering, teaching green skills. Because here I have listed what a green teacher competences are. She needs to know about climate targets, about the cost benefits, know about where are the jobs, have a capacity then to design it into into green training, having knowledge, experience on the newest technologies, and know how to collaborate with enterprises where the design, the research is taking place. Not easy if you do not have time for it, if there's no incentives, and if there's no provision on continuous professional green development of teachers. Key activity. We have seen in Greta a number of innovative practices to just do something fast and now through a so-called bite-sizing, bite-by-bite approach and prototyping models. So working step by step together, finding out what do we need, contacting enterprises, what is it you need and what is it you mean when you say you need this, and then translating it into learning outcomes, trying to develop a program, testing it with some enterprises before it's rolled out. That's the prototyping. This is one way to do it, to find solutions, because in many of our cooperation countries, there are not a large number of provided opportunities for this continuous professional development. Just an example, let's move on. Funding, I just thought I would mention Erasmus Plus, as you are part of, a really great opportunity to move forward, to learn from each other on centers of vocational excellence, and how then in practice to ensure the sustainability principles that we heard our two colleagues from Denmark were explaining what your project is about. We move on. Yeah, and I have this one. Cooperation with partners, the most important when we talk about vocational excellence, centers of vocational excellence, and in the green transition, more complicated. Just jump 2 slides and then I'll show this one. Not that one, next one. Skills ecosystem, many different partners. Extended now in the green transition, maybe NGOs have a new role, research institutions. Most important, map the stakeholders, understand their language. Then we can start cooperating on common projects, apprenticeships, research and so forth in a local community to tackle the issues on the green transition. We take the next one. Next one. And we move on. We move on. Yeah. These were the key recommendations I had, okay? Getting a little back to some of my comments up earlier on, importance with having skills strategies integrated with local commitments, the reference to Paris Agreement, but also in a country having multi-level governance from the national level down to the local government, and then also horizontally having different sectors working together, environment, finance, education, agriculture needs to be integrated if it should be relevant for the skills to be provided. Collaborative partnerships, we've been through that. Next one. Greater autonomy for vet provision, to have possibility to act fast, change, make maybe micro-credentials, small programs that meet immediately the needs of the industry or the local community, empower vet educators, having incentives for engaging in professional training continued. Next one. COVUS. Of course, important when centers of vocational excellence saying we have a green campus. Yes, ensure that there is a green audit to check, monitor, and then improve over the next 2 years. Financing important, that is actually related to a green strategy. We have outcome-based funding models. This is what we are recommending. Next slide, and sorry for rushing through, but it's all in the report which I provided for the QR code. Achievements of centers of vocational excellence or achievements of excellence to reward it is very important. This is what we see initiative from the European Commission. And I take it you agree to the last one, importance of exchanging best practices and expertise. Boom, next one. Just as a motto, we never leave anyone behind in Greta, like with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but we always leave something behind, and I would like to leave something behind. It's yet another 2 QR codes where you can read more about our Network for Excellence, which Greta is a part of, and there's also yet another new publication that came out as a part of the European Year of Skills that ended in April, where we actually argue on the importance of centers of vocational excellence and their role in a just transition. Very last slide, and then I stop. I just thought I would show that one, because that's the famous picture painted by Picasso, who lived here when he was a young man. And a little bit later he came back and painted the end or the beginning of Rambla, the column of Colombo. And I really hope that by the end of your meeting, you will feel that maybe you should put up, maybe not a physical, but maybe a mental column of good memories and a column of green achievements and achievement of your many work packages you have in this very ambitious project. So I wish you a good time and thank you for listening.
That is amazing. I know we would be able to stay here and ask you questions forever, but we have lunch soon, so hold with us. We will have some practicalities. We'll have the student assistants go around with the microphones, and I will ask you to sit here and use these microphones to be able to answer the questions. And just another practicality, the streaming session, the streaming session was recorded and is available on YouTube. So we'll be able to go through that again at a slower pace and kind of digest it a little bit and have the QR codes hopefully. And if not, we can share those via email or something. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Thank you. My name is Juri Barko. I'm from Saxion University in the Netherlands. I was just wondering, when you talk about greening, of course it's a very broad terminology, but what does it incorporate? Because when I hear it, I tend to go into the environmental green subject, so to say. But is that correct, or is it a more wider aspect or approach?
Thank you very much. It's part of what you're saying. We take a broad approach because what I tried to showcase is that it's actually all jobs mainly that needs to green up, to have a sustainability principle or a green mindset, basically thinking about the environmental impact of what you're doing. A welder, for example, what does it take in electricity to use the welding machine? Construction sector, what are the impacts from when you start using cement? How was it produced? Is it light, or is it the old heavy one where you actually use a lot of fossil fuels to burn it and so on? So for each profile, each occupation, the greening is about having the green mindset or the environmental thinking, what is the impact? Secondly, my point was the greening is not just about going through a training program and then look into, is there some new skills, some new green technologies the students the learner should know about. It's embedding it in with other activities on what is going on in an education institution, the green campus, also how you work with the stakeholders in your community, how teachers are equipped with new skills for actually being able to turn the developments, the requirements into the training programs. So it's a broad definition or understanding that we are using. And I think I had the slide where I showed it's part of a modernization process, because we are in a revolution, in the industrial revolution, with the two transitions, the green and the digital transition. So it needs to be broad. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Jesper. I'm coming from the Central Denmark EU office. So Susanne, you mentioned in your presentation that the external partners and therefore the companies are not prioritizing sustainable development. What can we do about that, and what is the reason for it?
We were actually surprised about this finding in the peer reviews, that our vet providers, the COVIS, said, well, enterprises are not prioritizing it. And when we digged a little bit deeper, we found out that there were maybe two reasons for having that understanding, that enterprises in general have another pace of time when they need the skills here now, and maybe explaining it in another way, having another language. And that's why it's so important to have a framework of understanding, a common language to define what are we concretely talking about when we say the green skills, the occupation, what should the profile look like. And this is where ESCO kicks in, but it's also where other mechanisms are important, like social dialogue, for example, having a kind of broker, a social partner that can translate what the industry needs to the education system, because they want the same.
Regarding ESCO, because it's also something that we've discussed in using within the Teach for SD project. Yeah. We've noticed, for example, that here in Lisava, we will be working with the textile and fashion sector, which is a domain that is very well documented, let's say. It's an old industry, yeah. It is consolidated. But I'm wondering whether ESCO is updated enough with all the new jobs that they are appearing, and how this can, yeah.
The ambition is there to update it and have actually green skills, green flavor also attached to it. But the problem is, like I mentioned a few times, is the rapid pace of change and time. And I think this is where micro-credentials are coming in a little bit more handy to put up training programs. But still, ESCO can be the common language to be used still.
I'm sorry, I have another question. I'm so sorry. But I have been working in various projects, and when we were discussing about micro-credentials, most of the times the problem or the barrier that we reach is how we can create like a common certification for that is more, because there are so many micro-credentials. Yes. So what would be your opinion about it?
I'm happy to say at the European Training Foundation, we have an entire team working on that. And I'm not the expert here. But micro-credentials, it's possible to build it up by actually having a number of smaller credentials, and then the packaging of micro-credentials, that a solution. I have a number of cases or examples that I could send to you where you can see how this is actually an opportunity. Our team have made a recent research on examples exactly on that topic.
Is there any more questions in the audience? Yes.
Hello, my name is Jan Krasulki, also from Saxion University in the Netherlands. I was wondering, you have a very top-down approach, rather political. Where is the voice of the student? How do you facilitate, and you need a top-down approach, so don't get me wrong, but you also need a bottom-up approach where you facilitate the students, living in the new world, living in their new, and we need to adapt to that as well. So how's that coming together?
Music to my ears. You're absolutely right, and actually one of the slides that I skipped before I showed the whole institutional approach, I had listed exactly the many actors in a school, students, parents, very important to include. Some are more robust in doing it. The green living labs that I showed you was exactly, the example I draw out, was exactly an important example of how students take the lead and define what they need, because the situation is exactly, and we see many interesting analysis on that, student knows more, they know more than the teacher, they're driving forward the green process. So yes, students are important and needs to be included. Maybe Greta is not strong enough on having in our specific activities, but we focus on it, recommend it for each of the schools, but point taken, and I'm with you.
I would also say students drive the digital transition quite well as well. It's mind-blowing, I would say. And I got good news, we have a little bit more time, but if you're starving, you can leave, but we have a little bit more time for questions. So, more questions from the audience?
Hello, I'm Birgitte Markussen from VIA University. I'm curious because you talk about this green transition and the digital transition and the green mindset and the companies and the new jobs, but this greening, what is it? I mean, we talk about greening, but we also talk about degrowth. And do you go address that dilemma? I mean, You talk about the workforce for the companies and the education, but something is in the gray zone, I think. Do you address that, or?
I'm not sure what I should answer, because I'm not totally sure if I understand the question, but I think in this slide I tried to show this. The green and digital transition is not entirely identical twins. Some solutions that industry is developing, not only digital, are not green. And I think it's wrong to talk about a twin transition where my statement is they are not identical. But the green transition is a political commitment. We need to reduce the global warming by reducing CO2 emissions. And that can be done in many different ways. We could sit on our hands, not do anything, but we could also find solutions for clean production. And we are looking in our project in Greta at the moment, we are looking into the construction sector, where we look at what are the solutions, but we still need houses, we need to rebuild, and we need to retrofit. So we are looking at solutions for that, but you are right, there is a dilemma for growth, and it cannot all be, if we say it's green, that there's also the greenwashing, if that's what you're hinting at. I'm not sure if I'm answering totally what you mean, or what you're asking.
Half, because it's not, I don't talk about greenwashing. It's more like when you talk about sustainability and sustainable development, it's like, is it possible for us to continue to live as we do? I mean, there are many questions here which is not addressed. When you talk about futures literacy, for example, what do the students need to learn? Do they just need that, I mean, can we do the same in 50 years?
No,
And do you address that? I mean, that's just, I'm just curious if you do take care of that.
we take care of it in the sense that we are saying we cannot continue living the way we learn, the way we do. We need, and we are in this fundamental modernization process, which the greening is about. It means from the minute or second we open our eyes, we need to change. We need to change how we live, how we commute, how we work, what we eat, how we exchange ideas. So no, we cannot continue as we do. And that's actually what Greta is about. Seeing what are the needs for change in different sectors, and then arguing, so what are the skills needed? Of course, we don't know the jobs in 5 years because of the technological development, but we are trying as good as we can to look into the future skills. But fundamentally, we cannot continue the way we live and work and study.
More questions? I have a question. You talked in this pyramid where we're talking about the changing of skills from the manual dirty into more green and yes and no. I think I know where this is going, but I'm also a little bit looking into the digitalization and modernization is also looking back and reinterpreting the craftsmanship and that it's not just it's dirty and not kind of modern, but there were ways of doing that were much better than what we're doing now. It's just slower, maybe, or so I think I see this. We're moving clean production. We're moving from dirty production to cleaner production, yes, but maybe it's slower production too, and then we link it a little bit to the degrowth idea that is very politically charged. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that.
Actually, what I meant about dirty was the industries that are polluting with the large CO2 emission. That's what I meant, not getting dirty as such. Yeah. Because we actually see maybe also a bit of getting back to the old crafts. I'm with you there. Yeah. So.
Dirty hands with dirt. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Susanne, for a very inspiring keynote, and also happily to say that it's very aligned with the objectives of our project. So I think there's a lot to look into regarding your report. This is maybe a bit more, widening or opening question, but for us, we are still in the beginning phase of our project, even though we've been in it for a year, but we're still just in the discovering. We are trying to figure out how to use the skills and the competences that we now think are very important for the education for sustainable development. But there's also a bunch of EU and international projects going on, discovering a lot of what we are doing. So this is more do you have any recommendations for us as a project, but also the partners, individual partners, on how to, to navigate this political system that are just exploding within the green transition and the education for sustainable development?
If we start a little bit broad in answering your question on navigating in the many different projects that there are for Centers of Vocational Excellence, if that's what you are asking first. Actually, at the moment, the European Training Foundation is working on a contract for the European Commission where we are collecting all the different projects, and we are putting up a website designing so there will be a one entry to the many different activities that are happening when we talk vocational excellence. And here, many of the projects are, of course, focusing some way or the other on sustainability, on greening. So this is good news. It's soon coming up. And I also see that later on we have Catapult coming actually they were collecting and having such a facility on where to find more information.
Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation.